think kids deserve a network just for them, a network that thinks about them. We think it's great for kids to understand that they're all in the same boat and we're on their side. I am the president of Nickelodeon. I'm darn proud of it. Some networks are there part-time for kids when it's convenient for them. We think we should be convenient for you. Nickelodeon is always there for kids every day, 365 days a year.
Kick it.
Welcome to Splat Attack, a podcast honoring the slime-filled past. I am your log-whittling, sloppy nose goblin Manny.
And I'm your double-daring documentarian. Glad I got that word out. Alex. And Manny.
Yes?
Even though I'm a bit hoarse this afternoon, I'm going to put everything I've got into it. What are we talking about today?
I'm so happy you asked, because we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of Nickelodeon and Ren and Stimpy with talking with not one, not two, but three documentarians made famous by their orange ears and Happy Happy Joy Joy documentaries.
Oh, I'm excited about this. I'm very, very excited about this. I've been asking some questions. I've got all kinds of questions I want to ask these guys because I'm sure that putting this together has not been an easy task. So I'm really excited to pick their brains.
Oh, absolutely. So what do you say? Let's bring them in from the ceiling.
Of course, we got to lower them down from our crane system, just like we're lowered down with every episode. And
there we go.
Joining us, we've got Scott Barber, who is part of the Orange Years. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
My pleasure. Yes. And I already warned everybody, I'm terrible with names. I should have checked beforehand. But Ron Cicero. I was close. I'll take it. How you doing, Ron?
I'm very well. Thanks for having us on.
Great, my pleasure. And we have Chemo Easterwood. How are you, sir?
Perfect. Great job on that one. I'm doing good.
Welcome to the podcast.
I did check with Chemo beforehand, so I was like, "Is this how you say your name, right?" And then he was like, "Yeah, it is." Before we really get into the episode, for all of you Slimesters, because that's what we call all of our listeners out there, this is our Gakoids Choice episode. Over on Patreon, we allow our Gakoids one episode a season for us to cover what they want to talk about. And earlier, when we had a poll in January, I asked them, give me some categories, and they gave me a whole bunch, and I said, all right, now vote. Now, these are the ones you picked, and they wanted to do an episode review talking about both documentaries of the Orange Years and Happy Happy Joy Joy, and they've also submitted a few questions along with ones that we had on our own. So thank you, all of you Gakoids, for submitting this. If you are listening and you're a Slimester and you want to have a little say in next season, you know where to go. But that being said, we are going to segue a bit into our descriptions for both of these documentaries. So, Manny, why don't you start us off with Happy Happy Joy Joy?
Happy Happy Joy Joy is a documentary that delves into the creation and impact of culture legacy of the beloved animated television series The Ren and Stimpy Show, directed by Ron Cicero and Chemo Easterwood. The documentary provides an in-depth look at the groundbreaking and often controversial series and its creator, John Kricfalusi. The documentary includes interviews with key figures involved in the Ren and Stimpy production, including animators, voice actors, and Nickelodeon executives. Happy Happy Joy Joy offers insight into the creative process behind the series and challenges it faces along the way. The documentary also examines the impact of Ren and Stimpy and the animation industry and pop culture, highlighting its innovative animation techniques, irreverent humor, and groundbreaking approach to storytelling. Despite its controversial reputation and behind-the-scenes turmoil, the series left a lasting legacy and paved the way for future generations of animators and cartoonists. Overall, Happy Happy Joy Joy celebrates the mad creative genius of John Kricfalusi and the endearing appeal of the Ren and Stimpy Show, while also acknowledging the controversies and challenges that surround the series and its creator. It's a must-watch for fans of animation and anyone interested in history of television.
And the other documentary that we are looking at, of course, is The Orange Years, the Nickelodeon story. And it is a documentary film that explores the rise and impact of Nickelodeon. Directed by Scott Barber and Adam Sweeney, the documentary delves into the history of Nickelodeon, tracing its origins, cultural significance, and enduring legacy. The film features interviews with key figures involved in Nickelodeon's development, including creators, writers, actors, and executives. Through archival footage, behind-the-scenes stories, and insightful commentary, The Orange Years offers a nostalgic look back at some of Nickelodeon's most beloved programs, including Double Dare, Rugrats, Clarissa Explains It All, Adventures of Pete and Pete, and many others. The documentary explores how Nickelodeon revolutionized children's television programming by prioritizing creativity, innovation, and a deep understanding of its young audience. It examines the network's groundbreaking approach to storytelling, its commitment to diversity and inclusion, and its impact on pop culture during the 1980s and 90s. The Orange Years celebrates the nostalgia and lasting influence of Nickelodeon, offering viewers a trip down memory lane while also shedding light on the network's enduring cultural relevance. All right, well, we've already talked enough about it, and with this episode recently coming out, now I had just told our fine guests earlier with the latest documentary that's come out, and everyone talking about the dark side of children's television. That was a bit later. What we're talking about has been before all that, and I'm excited to get back into the things that we loved, the things that we enjoyed about Nickelodeon, and even though there is a bit of ew with John Kay. That's already been covered. They took care of that, so we don't have to talk about that if we don't want to. But questions for you guys, and feel free to jump in, any one of you. How did you guys get started in the industry?
Okay, this is Chemo. Me myself, I got in the film industry in 1987. So just doing, working on movies, TV, in the lighting department, lighting, camera, that kind of thing. And then that's where I met Ron. We did lighting together on some shows, and then Ron went off to go to be a big time producer. Dude left me hanging in the wind. But anyway, so he went and became a big producer, did a bunch of commercials and stuff, and then he sort of got burned out on it, and then he had contacted me, and I wasn't doing anything at the time, and he said, "Hey, we should do a documentary. We should I'm kind of done with what I've been doing for a while. So what do you say? Let's just do a documentary." And that's kind of what started it. But I initially was in the business in 1987, just working in just regular film and TV. And then when Ron kind of called me with that idea, that was in 2016, and then that's when we kind of launched the documentary stuff. I was doing little short form documentaries before that, but this was our first big project. So that's kind of my story.
Ron, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's he pretty much covered it. I mean, we've been longtime friends, and I've been doing commercials and short form branded content. I got a chance to work with some really great peeps, and I just sort of wanted to sort of jump back into the creative side. I directed spots for a time, and just sort of fell into producing. But yeah, Chemo had it exactly right. I was completely burnt out. It was like 2015, 2016, and having an opportunity to do what you love and working with one of your best friends is, you can't ask for anything more. Of course, we didn't expect it to go full 3 years or 3.5 years, but that's a whole other story we'll get into. But yeah, but honestly, that the background of lighting and camera that we both started in was so helpful when we both sort of went back to our roots and were lugging gear around and doing interviews. And it was a low budget film. It was basically the two of us, plus the talent. Occasionally we would pick up a boom man or an assistant, but it was mostly us until we got to post.
Yeah, I gotta say, you guys, the cinematography and editing and everything was really dynamite on Happy Happy Joy Joy. So knowing that it was just the two of you guys the majority of the time, that's very, very awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's very
Of
kind.
course. Yeah, for me, I'd gone to, school and was making independent films with my friends, just goofy stuff, trying to, make it, trying to get noticed or whatever. And then I became a dad and was like, oh man, this is all I know how to do. And I got to make money. So I just said, well, I know how to point a camera at stuff and make money. So I just filmed anything and everything I could that was legal. And
the baby walking and everything. Yeah.
And then I had, done some short form stuff for other companies and stuff, done little mini documentaries, and I kind of said, you know what, I think I could make a documentary, like a feature-length documentary, and kind of do the best of both worlds, do the creative stuff, but also, do something that might go somewhere. Since I am a father, I have to, be somewhat conservative with my time. And so I got to work with one of my good friends as well, Adam Sweeney, on that. We had crowdfunded it together, and he's a really brilliant journalist and writer. He's written for Birth, Movies, Death, and stuff like that. So we kind of were like, between the two of us, it seems like a documentary would be the way to go, because that's what I do, and he's a journalist, writer, and we've been friends and watched Nickelodeon in the '90s together. We were childhood friends, and it was just a dynamite adventure to get to go on.
So anyone can answer this too. What about documentaries interest you guys? To sort of like start this off.
You're your own boss.
That's good.
Makes sense. Yeah,
that's good.
But on the flip side to that, if you mess it up, then you are to blame.
Yes.
No pressure at all, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, no, for me, it's just, it's just, you can just, like Ron was saying, you call your best friend up and you're like, hey, we got to go and interview today. And it's chill, it's casual. You just know, you got to be on set at 6 a.m. and you got to, all this kind of stuff. It's just you kind of make your own schedule, and it's and just, I don't know, just meeting real people, having real people just talk about their experiences on something, especially as big as that show was, and you get to hear all these people reminiscing about like what they used to, it's just great to hear these stories of people talking about the good old days and how awesome it was and all the fun. And then you can go visit the locations and, and then see the product on the screen and you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about, and that kind of stuff. So it's just, I don't know, I've always found it interesting. Documentaries have always just been an interesting field for me, watching and making.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly nice to have that a little bit of that control too, right? Like it's probably one of the more pure forms of filmmaking, especially for Kimo and I, when we started on really big films, which is awesome. We got to, experience some incredible, we had some incredible learning opportunities, but the flip side of that is you really are a very small cog in a very big machine. Here we got a chance to, sort of get into it and take that risk and see if anybody cared to watch our vision. And fortunately, a few people have.
Yeah, totally. The same thing for me. You can make something with just a couple of friends, and have a really small crew, but still make something that looks professional. When you're trying to make a feature-length film that's, with actors and stuff, if I tried to do it with the budget that, we had done the Orange Years, it would have been very difficult to make it look high quality, and even then on a small film, you'd still have to have a relatively large crew. So ours was the same. A lot of times it was 2 of us, 3 of us. I also really like getting to travel, getting to go to Los Angeles and stay for a week, getting to go to New York. I got to go to Canada for the Are You Afraid of the Dark, and also for You Can't Do That on Television. To get like free trips with your friends, like to these places, was just nuts. And then kind of to tag along to what Kimo and Ron had said, getting to talk to these people that are incredible artists themselves. I mean, how awesome is that, to get to talk to somebody that you're a fan of and kind of learn you kind of get like a free masterclass, it's awesome.
My gosh, everything you guys are saying are right in line with part of why we do what we do. That's so that's so cool.
I mean, even for the shoestring budget that you guys said that you guys worked on, it truly both of these documentaries look amazing.
They do.
Especially
They
with
look
the
great.
interviews, the timing, the editing, even the artwork around it too. It's really good. Like on the Orange Years, I love the animation of Mark Summers arguing with that dad. It's hilarious. Like that was done perfect. And even on the Happy Happy Joy Joy with the cockroaches walking all over the place when they were talking about like John K's first apartment, that was great. So seriously, great job on both of your movies.
Production for it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, obviously we know that you all have done other bodies of work, but since we're talking Happy Happy Joy Joy and we're talking Orange Years, what made you choose those particular topics for a documentary?
Yeah, well, whenever Adam and I were kind of thinking, we wanted to crowdfund to get some money started, and we obviously had never made a movie before, so we were kind of like, what's something that other people could be into that we could kind of tack into that fandom, but then also something that wasn't saturated. We had some really good friends, or Adam is really good friends with them. I was acquaintances with these guys that did a film called The Prequel Strike Back, which is kind of like, hey, come on, like, is it really cool to get all over the prequels all the time? Like maybe there was some stuff that was lost in translation. And it's funny, like since then people have kind of come around to the prequels a little bit within reason. But they had been successful crowdfunding, but that's Star Wars. And so we're like, Star Wars is kind of oversaturated. It's hard to, yes, it's a big property, but it's also hard to get yourself seen through all the noise. So we were kind of thinking what would be cool, but also have a cool story. And, Adam and I would watch Nickelodeon all the time together, staying at each other's houses on Saturday night, watching Snick. Even whenever he moved away, we would call each other and watch Snick on Saturday nights when we were like 11 years old. And so it was like special. So we knew it would be passionate, but we were kind of like, yeah, but is there a story there? Like, it's just kind of like, oh, Nickelodeon, it's cool. But then once we kind of found out about Geraldine Laybourne, like, we're like, okay, that's the story. Like, her journey is the story, and all the other shows are kind of like little interstitials among this bigger journey. And they're like, okay, let's do it. So that's how we came about.
Yeah. So, what, honestly, a lot of it had to do with access, to be honest with you. I mean, this is going to sound sort of crazy, but I knew of the show, Ren and Stimpy, Chemo, living in Hawaii. Never saw an episode until we started this.
Wow, really?
Which freaks people out. They're like, how could you do a documentary? But that was the journey. And it was great because we weren't completely enmeshed in the show, we could see it as an audience who may not have seen the show growing up would interpret the show. And then, so that was actually really helpful. And then we had a few people alongside us, in addition to the artists, that were diehard fans, and we could call up and say, hey, we're looking to compare old movies with episodes of Ren and Stimpy. Can you help us out? Like, what Kirk Douglas picture did they steal the scene from? And so that was super helpful. But, a lot of it had to do with just looking at the show and for Chemo the first time, and just becoming enamored at how, I mean, this sounds crazy, but just artistic it is. It's like a kid's cartoon during a time when most cartoons were not particularly well made. And every part of it, from the music, the voice acting, the artistry, the animation itself, apart from the character design, was just phenomenal. And so we, being creative types, were just intrigued, like, who were these people that did this for TV? Because this was like theater quality animation being done for a kids network that was an upstart at the time. There was such a disconnect there, and so we were really curious, and that's curiosity sort of drove us into the project.
Yeah, and to add to that real quickly, what had happened is going back to when Ron was saying, hey, we should do a doc together. He was like, what do you have for ideas? And nothing at the time. I had a couple of different ideas, but a few years prior, this guy called Todd White I had been talking to him. He's a friend of mine. Todd White was an animator for SpongeBob, and now he's a fine artist on his own. And I was having lunch with him, and he's like, you need to do this documentary on John Kay. Like, he's my friend. He's like a friend of mine, and he's kind of a weird dude, but you got to do it. And he kind of just threw that out there over at lunch. And he's like, dude, you could interview this guy and all these big stars. Spielberg would probably talk about it. But at that time I was like, well, who's going to pay for this? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to start to do this by myself. So when Ron had said, like, what do you have for ideas? And I just kind of like, we threw out some ideas and I was like, well, this Todd, he was telling me about this Ren and Stimpy. I don't know. What do you think about that? And we kind of went like, well, all right, let's go back to our, our corners and sort of like, we'll do our own little, couple of day research or whatever on it. And then we got back a couple days later, or whatever it was, and we're like, wow, this is like, okay, we need to do this. And the fact that nobody had done anything before on it was a huge plus for us. So that kind of like sealed the deal, and we're like, okay, we need to, like, this is it, we're doing this, and that's kind of like the how it started.
Wow. Yeah, Scott, I mean, to your point, when not to think too much like a network executive, we're all like, screw the executives, they don't know anything. But when you start putting your own time and money and effort into it, and you're like, okay, what's going to sell? And not like you're completely whoring yourself out.
Totally.
But,
yeah.
Right? You got to go, I hope somebody sees this.
Yeah. Like finding that happy medium of like, what am I going to really love and enjoy, but also, we're obviously not trying to get rich off this, but you also don't want to work for, like you said, 2-3 years of your life. I think a lot of people don't understand how intense it is to make a documentary. That's why you see so many Kickstarter documentaries that then never come out, because you can buy these really awesome cameras for $2,000, but that's only like that much of making a documentary. That's totally it. Yeah. And I'm glad that you guys found something like that people are definitely passionate about, but also, you guys obviously enjoyed making.
Oh gosh, you all are hitting the same notes of things that we've gone through. Because I mean, we talk all things 90s, mostly Nickelodeon here, but there's been times when I would want to talk about a show that I'm passionate about, and my co-hosts are like, I've never seen a single episode of that in my day in my life. And then they'll start doing the research, and then you have my biased opinion and their completely new opinion that's completely unbiased, and then vice versa. And it just makes for like Wienerville.
And Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
I've never seen it up until like 2 years ago.
Yeah. It's so much fun. It's such a
Roundhouse.
Fun dynamic. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's Alex's show right there.
Yeah, Roundhouse. Love Roundhouse.
We get crapped on so much for not doing more about Roundhouse, but we really tried. We couldn't get a hold of anybody. But I thought Roundhouse is the most unique show I've ever seen. I mean, especially at that time. And so it's like, anybody listening, sorry, we wanted to do Roundhouse, we just couldn't get a hold of anybody.
Man, if I had known, you could have, because I've actually had a couple cast reunions since then.
Oh, cool.
If you ever want to do a documentary on Roundhouse, I
there
can
you
hook
go.
you up.
I'm seeing a sequel there, Scott. I'm seeing a sequel.
And that was actually
the Splat Attack podcast.
And that was actually one of the questions was mostly for Scott. What made you choose the people to interview that you did regarding the entire history of 90s Nickelodeon?
Yeah, we knew we wanted to have our core characters that told the main story, and that was Geraldine Laybourne, Anne Sweeney, Scott Webb, who is also in Happy Happy Joy Joy. We knew they were kind of telling the bigger, broader story. And then of each show, we kind of said, if we can get good archival that isn't already out there, just something that's not already all over YouTube. And then if we can get at least 2 people, then it's enough for us to kind of stop and really focus on the show. So we just cast the net broad and wide. And, as I'm sure you've heard a million times from other people, like, it was really difficult, but then once we got 1, 2, 3, then it became easier and easier and easier, because everyone was like, oh, I know that guy, I'll call them. Or like we interviewed Elisa Reyes from All That, and she became a producer on it. And she was like, oh, I'll be a producer. Just give me a list of everybody you want. She just called everybody. And you got us like Alex Mack, Keenan and Kel, Lori Beth. It was amazing.
Alyssa's super awesome.
Larissa Olenek. I shouldn't say Alex Mack. That's disrespectful to call people by their characters.
Well, you know, we said we're bad with names. It's like, oh, Alex Mack, her. Okay, yeah.
The amount of times I've accidentally slipped and called them by their character names whenever we've had these interviews.
And it proves what good actors they are.
And then I've had to correct myself. I'm sorry. You're not Walter. You're not Zach, the Black Power Ranger. You're Walter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times.
Alex Mack in particular, like I was about the same age, so in a very developmental time. So I definitely spent a lot of time thinking about Alex Mack whenever I was a kid. So sorry if I call
no,
No,
cool.
not at all.
You're cool, and you're in like company, and of course it helps that that was my name too, minus the Mac. Manny, why don't you take the next question?
Sure. What was your initial vision for the story you wanted to tell in the documentaries? Anybody can answer.
Timo, you want to start?
Initial vision. Good question. Well, I think we just actually, Ron, you're better at explaining it.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, sorry about that. Yeah, so initially it was a celebration of the show, and going back to what we spoke about earlier is, we were just so enamored by the artistry of the show. And we completed a film that was exactly that. And then this has sort of been reported already, but I'll say it again, is that I was typing up the credits and I got a call from a female, and just know that we got several calls during production that the word got out, and we got some really crazy stuff, like people that would call us and say, I worked on Ren and Stimpy, you need to interview me. And we're like, really? And they're like, oh, I did this episode, I did that. And then we would call somebody like Richard Purcell, and he'd be like, I've never heard of that person. And then we'd go back and go, hey, nobody's ever heard of you. And it would be like, click. You're like, all right. So yeah,
Wow.
it was really weird. And it happened more than once. So anyway, I get this call and on like a Tuesday, and they said Thursday, the story's coming out about John Kay. And I'm like, well, can you give me a little bit more information? And they're like, you got to wait. So our first film that just celebrated the show, John wasn't in it. He was sort of a mystery character in it, but Viacom loved it. The whole thing was done. We're like, yes, we're going to submit it to festivals. It's done. And then the news broke about John Kay. And so that, of course, completely upended our original vision, which, for better or for worse, completely changed the film. And consequently, John participated, which he hadn't done before. And it really became a gigantic puzzle on how to incorporate basically a current event with a timeline that took place in the 90s. So it was quite the editing puzzle. Yeah, so that was our original vision, and then that's how it morphed. So I hope that's helpful.
That I gotta say, from an editing standpoint, that was amazing. Because doing a celebration of any show, it's a challenge in and of itself. But by the end of it, you have this really cool, fun celebration of something that is beloved. But then once you have something like this, but you still have this fantastic body of work, but now you've got somebody's personal actions that's completely tarnished the way people look at this. How to balance the two, so you're still honoring the work, but you're also bringing to light this really ugly thing. And how do you not show bias? How do you just be completely honest with it? That is a very tough balance, and you guys,
it was tough.
Bastard
you
that.
should have seen our we had this board with post-it notes of just scene titles or whatever episodes, this is whatever it was, and you have this poster and it's got like 60 post-it notes on it, and you just keep moving them around, and you say, well, how about this? Why don't we put John? And then we wrestled with, when do we introduce John? Do we introduce him right in the beginning? Do we wait? Do we this? So you keep moving these post-it notes it's like this giant puzzle, and then you think you got it, and then you watch it and you're like, well, that makes no sense, because people are going to now think that this, and then you have timelines to deal with because this happened early, and then you have like current timeline. And it was so confusing at some points that you just want to run out of the editing room and just figure it out and call me, So, but yeah, you just keep moving these Post-it notes around, and then eventually they start to make sense. And then you start to watch and you go, okay, now this is making sense. And then you start to move the Post-it notes less and less. And then you finally, you got it. And it's gnarly. It's gnarly trying to figure that part out. But yeah, so that was incredibly difficult.
It was done so well.
Thank you.
Like, and I don't want to derail this. You could get into this later if you want, but I would like to know, what was it like interviewing John Kay and getting his trust to actually open up and talk about this?
Well, it was a 6-month process. So, like I said, the original version of the film, he had refused to be interviewed, even though we were contacting him through intermediaries. Richard Purcell was really key in making that connection. And so after the news broke, he felt like he needed to have a platform, but he didn't know us. And, look, face it, I'm sure, Scott, you've run across this too. Like, you mentioned documentary and people run for the hills, right? They're like, I don't want to talk to you. This is going to be a bad idea. So we would go and meet with John every Saturday because he happened to be a really big UFC fan. And that was one of the interests that he shared with our buddy Todd. And then I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I, knew a little bit about UFC. It was, just gaining his trust over the 6 months before we even started shooting. And then we shot him 3 times, which that in itself, I think, happened over the course of like 2 or 3 months, because we were upfront with him. We said, look, John, you want to address this elephant in the room. We're going to let you. We're going to give you all the questions ahead of time. We're not gotcha journalists. We're just trying to tell the story in the fairest, most accurate way as possible. And through that time, he eventually trusted us, and we upheld our end of the bargain. We let him say what he wanted to say, and that's how we arrived at where we did. Which, it's always funny too. Real quick, is like, of course, some of the critics are like, "Why didn't you pillar him more? And why didn't you?" It's like, dude, do you understand the win just to get that guy to talk in the first place? Like, you have no effing idea how difficult it was just to get the guy on camera, let alone talk about probably the worst thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that is a fine balance. Scott, was the end result for your initial vision for it?
Yeah, I think overall it pretty much was. That was kind of, the Orange Years is super lighthearted, celebratory. So we had done a lot of research. It was just all the life that came to it that, we didn't know. We knew the basic story, but hearing all the like extra little things from everybody, hearing it from them, and things like what was in the powder that they threw on the Are You Afraid of the Dark fire and stuff like that. That was really cool. And it's funny, the stuff that you're saying, because I really followed y'all's journey a lot, which, by the way, I have to give props to Jeff Johnson. He did all the animation in the Orange Years, and you can tell it's a John Kay style. That's what we wanted. That's what we told him to do. And he's a huge John Kay fan for a long time. And I was as well, but he's like an animator, so he like really loved him. And so, we knew all about the cans without labels and stuff like that. And I felt so bad for you guys whenever that happened, because, we had to change ours, but it was like a little bit, because Ren and Stimpy is a part of the Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Right.
And one quick story there, just to tack on, because there's all this stuff it's so interesting hearing from you guys. Of course, John Kay did not want to be interviewed in ours either. We couldn't get a hold of him at all. So this was before, of course, all this had come out, so it kind of worked to our benefit, which, one, we knew we weren't going to get to interview him anyway. And two, I had messaged Ron and Kimo early on just to say like, hey, we're going to try to do something totally different than what you're doing. So there's no like overlap, or, I mean, there's going to be some overlap, just nature of the beast, but if there's anything we can do to help. So we already were kind of like, we're not going to get into some of that stuff because that's going to be covered so well in this other documentary. But I couldn't get a hold of him. So I went to a convention, a comic book convention that he was at. And
Dude,
I
we
was
were there
like,
too. Was it
Really?
in Pasadena?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, we were there at the same
wow.
time. Oh, that's amazing.
That is so funny.
Yeah, because
That's cosmic, dude.
Yeah, before we got in touch with him, we went and we like hidden camera, like the shot towards the end where he's by himself drawing in that. That's so funny. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
That's what this whole little part is about, the weird parallels. So, I stood in line and I got this.
Oh,
from him.
nice.
Oh, cool.
And I got one for my friend Jeff as well that, did all the animation.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I was like, you know what? If I'm going to talk to him, I'm going to buy some stuff from him. Because usually that's kind of etiquette, at conventions. If you're buying something, you get to talk to him for a few seconds. And he didn't look at me at all, not one time. His assistant there did. And the only thing she said was, well, he's not even in the Ren and Stimpy documentary, if that tells you. So there's no way he's going to do yours. And I was like, okay, and so I just went along and he gave me this and said bye. And that was kind of that. But
That's crazy.
All right, Scott, here you go. Bye.
yeah, it's kind of like that. I was like, okay, whatever. But then all that stuff came out later. And again, luckily we hadn't interviewed him anyway. So, and one thing that, I love how we talk about it in the Orange Years, but I love how you guys obviously get to really shows it. It was not John Kay. It was all of those people. Like, no doubt about it. It's kind of like, when you look at, I was a huge Nirvana fan. It's all songs written by Kurt Cobain. Kinda.
Yeah,
But-
kinda.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl helped out on that too.
Come on. If Dave
Yeah.
Grohl hadn't done drums with those songs, no. Like they
No.
would not have been what they were. Kurt Cobain was not Nirvana, as much as but even this was even more so than that, it really was, log. I mean, that's what you think of. And Bob Kemp made that, right? I'm pretty sure that's what we had heard from Vanessa Coffey, and all that other stuff was just getting to, we already kind of knew that's what we were going to do. We're going to showcase all these other people and show that it's not this one dude, it's all these other people. So I think the name John Kricfalusi is in there one time by Vanessa Coffey. And then it's just kind of like, we're just like, we're going to give props to everybody else, so it just kind of worked out.
That's what a team does,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all know it, but John Kay was very much the heart of the start of it. And then once it got started, it was very much the team to help keep it going. Manny, why don't you take the next question, bub?
How did Nickelodeon, Viacom, and Paramount react to the release of the documentary?
Scott, I'm dying to hear. Go, you start. I want to hear what your experience was.
So, it was such a small, like scrappy little thing. These guys that had never made a movie, we crowdfunded a little bit of money to start it out, and it just grew and grew and grew. And then eventually, we got all these interviews. Adam F. Goldberg got on as a executive producer, and it got bigger than I think a lot of those people thought that it would. We knew we were going to cite fair use early on, which, that's, you have the ability to show all this archival footage, and as long as, you get a lawyer to sign off on it and get insurance, yada, yada, yada. We knew that we were going to do that from the very beginning. And Michael Donaldson, who wrote the book, who is, the main fair use lawyer that everyone wants to use if you can afford him, which we could that one time. But it says, just because you can, doesn't mean that you should, and you can totally do fair use, but it's kind of etiquette to reach out and say, this is what I'm doing. If you want to maybe work some sort of a deal out for the footage, like, let's do it. The subtext, I'm going to do it for free. But if you want something, I'll give you something. I'm an indie filmmaker. I can't give you $30,000 for like a 5-second Salute Your Shores clip. I just can't. But so we had reached out to them and just never got an answer at all. Never got any sort of answer. And then we had talked to a film festival called ATX down in Austin. They had done a Hey Dude panel in the past. And we were like, let's do a Nickelodeon panel. Because we're in Texas. Adam's in Austin and I'm in Houston. And we're like, wouldn't that be great? Partner with ATX, bring all those people here to Texas, and we can interview a bunch of them here. You know, it benefits the festival, it benefits us. It'll be this co-production thing. Oh, it's thundering here. And so we did, and then Nickelodeon came in and partnered with them and kicked us off. So like,
Oh,
yeah, like
no.
Whoa, what?
ATX, yeah, they contacts were like, hey, y'all are out, and we're like, what? Like we were working on this movie,
man.
like,
No.
yeah, Nickelodeon wants to work with us, so you can understand that we're going to work with them instead.
Oh my
So
God.
we were
Jeez.
out.
Oh.
And so the happy ending, though, you know, we got Geraldine Laybourne, and that was amazing. It was the same thing as you guys. We were going to. It's so funny what you said. Like John Kay was going to be this mystical character for you guys when you weren't going to get him. That's what we were going to do with Geraldine Laybourne. We're like, we're not going to get her. It wasn't until the very end when Adam F. Goldberg came in and he knew he had worked with her son and was able to get her on board. And so she was the last person we interviewed, you know, really similar. And so then she was like, I'm going to set up a call with you and Brian Robbins, who's the president of Nickelodeon. And so I was like, okay. So I did. I had this really cool call with them, you know. Really the one thing we wanted was like, if we just know that you guys aren't opposed to it, it will help us sell it. Because we were worried that maybe some people might not want to buy it because they're like, well, we have a relationship with Viacom. If Viacom hates this thing, maybe it'll sour our relationship. So we said, oh no, I love it. It's great. It's cool, you know, because he owed his career to Jerry Laybourne. So anyway, that's our relationship. We really didn't have one until the very end. And, you know, Brian Robbins had just come on board after, I think, homeboy that just, you know, got outed as a monster. He'd taken over for him. So it was kind of a happy time, you know. Geraldine Laybourne was really awesome. They'd gone through some dark times, and now Brian Robbins was there and was, you know, kind of trying to get it back on track. Anyway, sorry, that's
awesome.
it.
That's cool.
Oh, that's
No,
awesome. I was really
fantastic.
curious.
Love every bit of
Yeah.
this.
I'm taking
Yeah.
all that in right now. Like that's amazing,
I'm
Jared.
gonna let
Wow.
I'm gonna let Ron answer that question because he dealt with those guys more. But before, I'm gonna tell Scott that I think you said salute your shorts.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I worked on that show. I was one of the lighting guys on that show.
Oh, really?
Really?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
we
so
shot
cool.
we shot it in a warehouse in Van Nuys. I don't know, I forgot how long, but yeah, that was a fun show to work on.
In a
Wow.
warehouse?
Yeah, way
Dang,
back.
they did a good job of hiding that. Wow.
Yeah, back in the day, and some exteriors at Griffith Park. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a fun show.
That's awesome. That show looks great. You know, it's a single. It's not a multicam. It's a single shot, like shot somewhat cinematically. You know, and now shows are like that. But back in the day, it was all that multicam, just flat. So
Yeah.
that's awesome that you were a part of that because that show looks awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Another
So cool.
serendipitous event.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure is. Jeez.
That's amazing.
I'm completely nerding out over everything.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Oh my God.
That's awesome. Yeah, to answer your question is I knew better, but what we did was we shot most of the movie and then like, hey, we're gonna go to Nickelodeon and just see if like, you know, they'll loan us 40 minutes of Ren and Stimpy. And which is, I would not recommend that to anybody. That is a really dumb idea. Because if they come back and say no, then you're pretty much screwed. Because the way our film was structured, especially the second version of the film, we used a lot of the footage purposely to tell the story about John. So it was a really tricky fair use, not to mention that so much of the footage is in, you know, so much of the Ren and Stimpy footage is in our film. It's probably not 40 minutes, but it was used in a way that could be viewed as closer to the original intent of how the footage was originally created, if that makes sense. I'm not an attorney, but that's how it was explained to me. So that being said, is the executives that were there at the time were super excited about the first version of the film, and they had signed off on the use of the footage. We still had to send a final cut in after the John fiasco, but they were awesome. They were super supportive. They understood sort of what had happened to us because we had been talking to them for like three years at that point. And we just said, look, we're going to do a very balanced story. And they were cool with it. They're like, as long as you're not trashing the network, then we're good. And we're like, oh, there's really no reason for us to trash the network. And that wasn't just to gain favor. It was because that was a story.
We already discussed a little bit about how difficult it was to get people, so you've pretty much answered that. But is there anyone that you wanted to interview outside of the Roundhouse cast that you wanted to interview but you didn't get the chance to?
For us, I think Chemo. I wouldn't you say we pretty much interviewed it? I mean, we shot. I think how many?
52 interviews.
52 interviews. Yeah, we covered pretty much everybody.
No, there were guys that we wanted to get, and then they eventually came around. And it's like Scott was saying with the momentum thing. You get the first couple people, and then that kind of gets you a little bit of clout, and then people are like, oh, okay, you did it, okay, then I'll do it. And then then oh, those guys did it, then I'll, and it just builds and builds, and then it's just before you know it, everyone's like, hey, you need any more interviews?
Yeah. Totally.
It gives them a sense of insurance then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Well, I mean, the tricky part about this too was that it's not like the show was great to work on. It was pretty much known as some of the worst years of some of these folks' lives. I mean, it was really intense for a number of reasons. So, two guys that sort of show up out of nowhere and say, hey, talk about the worst time of your professional career on camera. Not everybody's so excited about that. And there was one or two people that said, you know what, I'm not going to talk about it. It's just too painful. But yeah, for the most part, we got everybody. So,
I mean, there's so many people that were on Nickelodeon. The big one that I get is Alanis Morissette, because she was on You Can't Do That on Television. Of course, that would have been amazing. And then, Pete and Pete had a lot of cool rock stars on it. I would love to have gotten to interview Iggy Pop. He played Nona Mecklenburg's dad. This super square dad. That's purely for selfish reasons because his character is so small. But just personally, I'd love to get to meet him. And we almost did. The two Petes, Danny and Mike, were two of the last ones we got as well because Adam F. Goldberg had worked with them. So they were already like the film. It's like, guys, we got to get this thing picture locked. We can't keep getting interviews. And so they were already late, and we put them in there. And those guys were like, oh, have you talked to Iggy? We could probably reach out to him. And I wanted to be like, oh yes, but then I was like, nah, I can't do that. Like the film, we got to get this done. We had already gotten accepted into Doc NYC at that point, so like we had to finish the film up. And I would have loved to have gotten to interview Billy West. I know he was in y'all's, and we because we don't have any of the voice talent for any of the cartoons. Like, we interview, the guy that created Doug, and then we got, the creators of we didn't get Klasky Chupo, but some of the people that worked on Rugrats, but Billy West or Fred Newman or the voice of Tommy, what is her name?
E.G. Daily.
E.G. Daily. I know her mainly as Dottie from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But I would have loved to have gotten any of those people. But we reached out to some of them and just didn't have any luck getting a response.
What do you hope your documentary adds to discourse surrounding children's television?
Scott, you want to take that one?
How did this make you feel, Scott? How did this make you feel?
Mine are all like way easier because ours is so lighthearted and y'all's is dealing with some of the most horrible things.
Ours was supposed to be lighthearted.
Right, yeah.
You don't know how envious we are of you, Scott. We can't even begin to tell you.
The other thing too,
we had to shoehorn this thing in, man.
Talking about fair. Like the legality of it all. That was one thing we were kind of never really worried about because we're like, what are you going to sue us for, like making you guys look good? We knew it probably, there's nothing controversial really about it. I did a documentary afterward called This Is Guar about the band Guar. And it's a lot more in line with Happy Happy Joy Joy. It's like some troubled geniuses that got together. But with that one, we were kind of, a little bit worried, like, is somebody going to get mad about the way they're portrayed here? But yeah, for ours, I just think that, we really wanted to, pull the curtain back people are so nostalgic for 90s Nickelodeon, but they don't necessarily know who Geraldine Laybourne is. We kind of want, I didn't even know until until we started doing research that all the way from You Can't Do That on Television to all that's a lot of shows were all under her watch. That's nuts, I mean, Double Dare, all the Nicktoons, all of that came under her watch. Double Dare, Are You Afraid of the Dark? You Can't Do That on Television, all that. Keenan and Kel. The list goes, Guts. It goes on and on and on. Wienerville, Roundhouse. It goes on, and it was all her. I mean, it wasn't all her, but she was a big part of why that happened. Her and Vanessa Coffey deciding to just go out and get real artists. A lot of people would not have done that, and to get to spotlight her was really what we wanted, and to show that, to take chances. They took a lot of chances on these people. Like, you hear the creators of these shows say it a lot, that they wanted them to take chances. Mitchell Kriegman, who's also in y'all's, he said, we were allowed to fail, but we weren't allowed to not take chances. And I thought that was just so great, that you hire people for the right job and let them do their thing. And especially, I feel like now more than ever, you see studios don't do that. They're like, it almost feels like in some ways a director is a director in name only. Like, we have the movie we're going to make. Your job is just to kind of like play Mad Libs here. But yeah, so just that. Hopefully, we added the discourse of how awesome Geraldine Laybourne is. She was a teacher. She wasn't a businessman, and just that, take some chances, do some cool stuff, because now, 30, 40 years later, we're all still talking about this stuff.
You know what the heart and soul of that was, that Miss Laybourne said, is like, what do kids want? And that's what it's all about. That's unbelievable. She made a network based on that. And that was the heart and soul.
Yeah. What do they really want? Not what do adults think they want.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say, just to throw that in there, what Scott said, but just to appreciate the analog of how it was done back then, as opposed to now with the computer and how easy it is, that kind of thing. I don't know. It just, Ron and I saw the analog heart of it, like this guys in a room, full of pot smoke, drawing, and just, I don't know, that to me is just something I wish kids would be able to watch this and appreciate, and realize how much work went into that whole show, and just, take something away from watching the documentary. Is like, just that, I guess, just the appreciation of the OG art style, because I'm personally not a fan of the Cintiq system or any of that kind of I watch cartoon, like when we see those cartoons with the Cintiq tablet and it's just perfect, I'm just not a fan of that. But when you see these cells and there's dirt on them, and there was even volcanic ash on some of them from when they were being done in the Philippines. So just that whole thing, that's what I geek out on, is that kind of cool, tangible, look at this art, this is OG right here, So that would be my thing. I hope kids would take away.
Like, Chemo, I have to add to that. I have the extra feature of them walking through the old Spumco offices, and that's when they're talking about the volcanic ash, and they're going through all the different rooms, oh, this was John's office right here, this was this office, and there was a spray painted Spumco on a wall. I don't know if that was planned for the movie or was that there.
Nope, that was there.
That was still there.
Yep, yeah, it was still there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we were walking around with Purcell, and he was just showing us the different rooms, and he's like, and I forgot what he said that room was used for, but he was like, whatever he said something like, oh, this is where we would do whatever. And I just walked in there with the camera, and there it was, that blue Spumco.
Yeah, Vince Waller was there too, who flew in from Japan, came from the airport to lead us around that. It was just nuts. I mean, he was just so generous with his time. Yeah. It's a camera rental shop now, or was. I don't know if it's still in business, but yeah.
Yeah, some ghosts there. And also the dentist was downstairs. There was that whole dentist story of hearing kids screaming as they're getting, their dental work done, which is what became Toothache. That episode Toothache was born because of that dentist office that was downstairs, and they would hear these kids going crazy in there. So yeah.
I just want to add to that things that I hope that both of these documentaries give is first of all the orange years. I mean, it's a super simple one because it's a very lighthearted historian look into the history of 90s Nickelodeon. And I've been part of Nickelodeon Facebook groups, and I'm an admin for like too many of them to really count. But that one gets brought up almost every month. Did you guys know that there's an Orange Year? There's a documentary on Hulu. This thing is so cool. I mean, it gets brought up all the time, but no one wants to go look up Ren and Stimpy because everyone's discriminative. Well, I don't want to say discriminative, but everyone's upset with John Kay, which is understandable. But that's why I hope that they go watch that show. Watch Happy Happy Joy Joy because I love Orange Years. I love the feeling it gives. I love I'm hoping that it will certain kids after they've watched a lot of these shows with their parents will go back and watch the documentary of how the show was made because that's actually what's been happening with my son, me doing the show and getting to talk to a lot of the same people that you all have had the opportunity to talk to. And then my son who's 10 well what show are you talking about? And then he'll get either my DVDs out of the garage or he'll start looking through Paramount Plus and find the show and he starts watching it. And then I start to do this, and he's like, "Oh, can I watch Orange Years with you?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Can I watch Happy Happy Joy Joy? No. I don't want to explain what John Kay is doing
Absolutely
here.
not.
But with Happy Happy Joy Joy, what I hope people will get from that, take out of kids television, is find a way to separate art from artist, especially because John Kay, as pivotal as he was in it, like we had said earlier, there's still so much work that was put into that wasn't John Kay. And for a bulk of the series, probably most of the series, it was mostly Bob Camp and team. And I really feel like if people would really watch Ren and Stimpy as this and not what one person has done, it shouldn't tarnish that too much. The thing that because with all this talk of what's going on right now with Quiet on Set, I've had a few people in the comment section of various things talk about, oh my gosh, this has been going on forever. This has been going on since John Kay. And I'm like, no, no. John Kay was he was an awful boss. But Nickelodeon was not having that, and they kicked him quick. And the rest of the time, it was mostly focusing on the rest of the team. And then it was all quiet for a long time until, much later. But the rest of the team is what kept that show going. And then everyone wants to pull out the adult party. Like, I watched this when I was a kid. I can't believe I watched this when I was a kid.
Oh,
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
You didn't
see
watch
that
this when you
all
were
the
a kid.
time. People erroneously say, "I can't believe this was on Nickelodeon." Like
And it's
the
that stupid saw scene.
yeah, it's like
yeah,
that
it's the
was
same
not
one.
on there.
And it's like, no, that wasn't Nickelodeon. It wasn't. It's Spike TV, and that's not even a channel anymore.
And if you actually watch the whole series, all but 6 episodes that he put together,
I can't even get through it.
that's like the tamest thing out of everything in that series. Oh my gosh, it's awful. And that further proves that this team is what kept the show going. And I really encourage any of you who are listening, all you Slimesters out there, and take word from our Gakoids. Go check both these shows out. I'm sure you've already seen Orange Years. If you've not seen Happy Happy Joy Joy, please go and rekindle that appreciation for Ren and Stimpy that's been tarnished from one person's actions.
And if I want to add on to that,
No.
definitely check. Okay, well, I'll wait till later.
No, go ahead.
If you want to check out Happy Happy Joy Joy, definitely separate the art from the artist. But speaking of artists, I like to draw myself, and having all these artists together talking about their technique and their process, especially if I could give an example, the part when they talk about putting the tape over
Oh,
the
gosh.
drawings of the
Wow.
storyboards and the pencils. I have personal experience doing that, and having all the art techniques, especially seeing Bill Ray work on his paintings, unbelievable. So there's some great shots of art, and fans that talk about the show and how much it meant to them, especially Jack Black too, as well.
Oh yeah.
Definitely check it out.
All right, we've only got a few more questions to ask these guys, but before we do, we're going to take a quick commercial break and see what's going on in the world of Splat Attack. So everybody stick around for a few minutes and we'll be back in just a bit.
Don't rush off. Nickelodeon will be right back.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode review of Happy Happy Joy Joy and the Orange Years. If you are enjoying this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. If you're listening on a podcast app, leave a review. It's been a while since we've had one of these. Make us happy. Please send us a review. I don't care. Leave a 1-star, say you suck. Or I don't know, leave 1 star and say, by the way, these guys really have 5 stars. I don't care. Leave us a review. We appreciate it. That being said, you guys are awesome. Thank you guys for everything, even a 1-star review. This episode came out today because of our Gakoids over on Patreon. And if you guys would like to have an opportunity, a say, a voice your choice, as they used to say, in a future episode of Splat Attack, then head over to Patreon. We have exclusive minisodes there, along with live streams twice a month, behind the scenes, look at our episodes, early access, and more. Go to patreon.com/splatattack to get your voice heard. Did you know that in the early days of Splat Attack, the entire thing was powered by our slime tank? We also have Slime Tank t-shirts over on our Bonfire. Go to bonfire.com/store/splatattack store to get a Slime Tank shirt, along with a Snick couch. Or did you know that there were only 3 pieces to that silver monkey? Well, we've also got a shirt saying that too. We've all kinds of stuff headed that way, so go over to our Bonfire page, bonfire.com/store/splatattack store. I swear I'm going to use you as a picture-in-picture for all these things. We are going to LA to see SplatCon. I mean, it's called SplatCon. How can we not be there? Hope to see you there. It is going to be October 19th and October 20th in LA at the Hilton LAX. Make sure that you use code ATTACK10 to get 10% off of your tickets, or use ATTACK25 to get $25 off of a hotel bundle. Hope to see you in LA. Tune in next time, Slimesters, when we invite some of the All That cast to celebrate, yes, I said celebrate, the show's 30th anniversary, because there is still plenty of things to celebrate about it. You can find all the retro-rific action only here on Splat Attack.
Now back to Nickelodeon.
All right. I hope you guys are excited about all the things we got coming up, because I'm excited for the things we got coming up. We got some fun stuff. But to wrap up with just a few more questions, before we get into these little personal favorite things, Manny, I'm going to segue over to our Gakoids questions. And some of these are kind of a repeat, so we'll probably just give a quick recap of them. But we only have 3. One of them was from Chris, and we did already kind of answer the how did you decide which Nickelodeon stars would make an appearance in your documentaries? And we definitely already covered that. But and Chris, yeah, you heard me say earlier, hey, that's one of our questions. That was actually one of our Gakoids questions. I'm going to save Carl's question for last. Chris had another question. And if you have anything you want to add to it that hasn't already been discussed, please do. How were you able to contact all the Nickelodeon stars that were in your documentary?
You know, and I'll tack on one last thing to that. There are a lot of people that I hope people can understand this, because we get a lot of, why didn't you get this person? Why didn't you get this person? One person was like, why didn't you get Billy West? And I think he even got on there like, yeah, why? And we're like, well, I could post a screenshot of the email, but whatever. But you know, there were a lot of people where like that we did reach out to there were a lot of people that we wanted to get that were not in there. You know, Roundhouse, my brother and me, just stuff like that, where we weren't able to make it happen. But how we contacted people was just any way we could. We made a spreadsheet of all the people that we wanted, and again, it was like we knew if we could at least get 2 people from the shows, preferably an on-camera talent, an actor, and then a writer, director, creator. So you kind of get both of those points of views. And so we just made a list, and every way we could get a hold of them, they had Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if we could find their publicist, which that's one thing we learned, go for the publicist, not the agent, because the agent doesn't care because they're not going to get money, but a publicist will think of it as free publicity. So that was one thing we had a lot of luck with. But that was it. We just cold called people. Michael Ray Bauer, Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts, was one of the first people that was like, heck yeah, I'll do it. So we kind of got initially some people just saying, I'll do it, just off of us saying it. And then after that, it was just them contacting their friends. Like after we got Mark Summers, no game show person really, everyone else, all the game show people wanted to do it because he's the OG, he's the GOAT. And then, Elisa Reyes, again, we interviewed her, and she's such a savvy businesswoman. She just said, I want to be a producer. I don't want to just be interviewed. I want to be a producer. So she came on and she helped us book a lot of those interviews. So that was how we did it. Just find somebody who get in. And if you find somebody who's even more in, let them do their thing.
Yeah, it's fairly similar. I mean, I have a huge chalkboard. It's like 8-foot chalkboard, just writing names as we would come across them. People would mention it on a phone call, and we'd write it down and then sort of chase after them. And certainly, Todd was instrumental in making those initial introductions with people like Richard Purcell, who really was, not only was he John's assistant, but he was an incredibly talented writer and artist. And then, once he sort of would put in a good word for us, like, hey, this isn't a hit piece. Even in the beginning, people were very afraid, like, are you going to talk about the very worst part of the show? And we're like, no, we're going to celebrate it. And so he was very helpful in sort of conveying our message and how we were going to approach it. So
to add on to that, kind of funny, I think when we started to gather names, the very first thing we did was we watched an episode and we literally hit pause at the credits and we just started writing everyone's name down. This guy's an artist, write it down. And then we fast forward a little bit, pause. Who's that guy? We just write it. And then we just started. And it's a lot of Facebook. A lot of these people you can't get a hold of. So they have a Facebook page and you try it there. But yeah, that was kind of funny. We literally just paused an episode. That's how we started to get our first names.
And that's a smart way to do it.
Yeah, you guys are preaching to the choir.
Yeah, and our very first interview, Ron, what was his name again?
Jerry. And I was just going to say, I'm dying right now because he's really he's very influential in sort of the animation preservation. He's part of the Animation Society. I'm butchering this. It's been a couple of years, but he was such a nice guy. He was the first guy we met with, the first guy we interviewed, and he was actually at the Spumco offices when the show was being made. He had a separate film company that just happened to be sharing office space. So he knew a lot of those guys. So he was really helpful. And I wish I could remember Jerry's last name.
Jerry Beck.
Beck, yes. Such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he would actually go through the trash cans and pull out the discarded drawings. And he has a garage full of his stuff.
Oh,
but yeah,
I saw that one too. He even had a styrofoam cup where someone drew something with their fingernails. Yeah,
exactly.
It was awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was very helpful.
The last question that we had from our Gagoids, and this is from Carl. What advice do you have for anyone who's wanting to make a documentary?
Start crying now. Get all your crying done in the beginning. I would just say, go for it. I mean, just start. That's all you can do. All you can do is just. I mean, I'm working on one now, and that's what you just get your camera and whatever your story is, and you just literally start. Just say, today I'm going to start. I'm going to film something, whatever that is. If it's an interview or B-roll or whatever that is, and just start doing it and learn a little editing. That's going to help you. Just know the basics. But yeah, I would say just start doing it.
Get a good editor. That's what I would say. Get a good editor, because especially in docs, you think about it maybe more in fiction filmmaking, that the director needs perspective, but I would say it's even more so because you have so much footage and there's so much stuff that you want to put in. I think our first cut was like 2 hours and 45 minutes or something, and our poor friends had to suffer through it. And you don't realize how much more impactful it can be when you start pulling stuff out. So yeah, get get a good editor. Our editors were awesome. Kimo and I started. There was a lot of segments that still made their way in the film, but the overarching um, uh, narrative arc, etc., wouldn't have been as strong if we didn't have people helping us pull stuff out.
That's interesting. Yeah, on both the documentaries that I've done, The Orange Years and This Is Guar, the editors were not really there for production, and I think it really helped a lot because, like you said, it's overwhelming. It's all of this footage matters, all these sound bites matter, but yeah, like I totally. You know, I think to kind of go back to what we had talked to before, I think people think it's easier than it is, but you have to understand that don't blow all of your money on production. I think that happens. People get a budget and they spend almost all of it on production, and especially if you don't know how to edit. If you don't know how to edit at all, and you're going to have to hire an editor, you're done. You know, like so you got to save that money because, I mean, post production is everything. It has to be. You know, you got to. How are you going to do those recreations? Are you going to hire an animator? Do you have archival? Or are you going to have to purchase archival? So just save your budget for post, please.
Yeah, if you don't have to travel, it's not, and you have a camera, it's not that it really is all in post. That's when your piece is going to come alive. It's with, you know, sound, and I mean, we spent, what was it, a week in New York just doing sound, just sitting there in the booth doing sound frame by frame, you know. And then your color guy can bring it to life, and you know, if you got animation, then that helps, you know, so it's just, that's where all your money's going to go.
I mean, what drove it to me was the music in the background. Like all the music flowed great with the scenes. So rather it be instrumental or something that's been out there for a while.
Yep. Yeah. So whether you have somebody score it or you get stock music or whatever, it's still going to cost you money. So yeah, it's definitely, I agree wholeheartedly with Scott on saving your pennies until post-production.
I have one more question, and then we have like two little personal opinion questions, unless Manny has anything else. But mine is, what is something from your documentaries? What was the most challenging, and what was the most rewarding aspect of it?
Challenging would be the chronological order. I would just say just figuring out the structure of what goes where in timeline, and not having people get confused. That would, to me, that was the hardest thing, was just the figuring out the structure of the entire show.
And then
figuring out your structure. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
figuring out your structure and then having to figure it out again after you've already done. I'm sure that was pretty challenging.
Well, and actually, Scott, that's a great observation, because that was actually what made it twice as hard, because we went in with this idea, let's just celebrate the show. Well, if you're only going to celebrate the show, then, you know, where do you fit in the sort of ugly parts of it? And that was actually another whole challenge, was like, you know, we were working this one editor and he just beelined right for all the sort of the worst parts of it. And we're like, at the end of the day, people are going to want to see at least some of the good parts.
What was your most rewarding?
I would just, for ours, I think the most challenging thing was the amount of stuff we had to cut down. And I so wish, and I hope it happens one day, we could make a series out of it. Because, I mean, you know, all these creators that we interviewed, I mean, you know, I know you guys are the same way. You know, you interview someone for an hour or two, and then 15 seconds, a minute, maybe 2 minutes it's in there. You know, we could totally do a long series. So that was it, was like, there's so much good stuff that had to be cut because you can only make it so long, you know. And I mean, even that, ours is a little bit over 90 minutes. So we're kind of pushing it, you know. But yeah, what an awesome challenge to have. Just like, we have so much good stuff, we have to cut it out.
Like Alex and I agree, like it could have been like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, I would say rewarding, real quick, would be at Sundance in the back of the theater, with the entire theater is full and they're all watching your movie. That to me was the most rewarding part of the whole thing.
Yeah. Wow.
And to your point, Scott, we do these episodes every 2 weeks, and we've got to talk to some really wonderful people, and that have been involved with the network in some form. And we do have some coming up this season that we're super excited about. But all these episodes, they last about 2 hours, and sometimes it's talking about the entire series that they were involved in, or sometimes we just pick one episode and we just talk about that one episode, and it fills a 2 hour spot of just talking about this one aspect of this little minuscule piece of what encompassed Nickelodeon. I would love if anybody would ever have the opportunity to do an entire series just talking about each show and the challenges that went with the show, and the changes and all that stuff, because that could be, gosh, you could do seasons plural of that. But no, I digress. Manny, why don't you take it with our last couple of questions, the personal opinions.
What was your earliest memories of Nickelodeon and Ren and Stimpy?
The day I started working on the documentary.
That's right, because you never saw an episode. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, I've never watched the Nickelodeon channel to this day. I have not seen any. Watched the Nickelodeon channel, and yeah, literally, I've never saw an episode until we found them bootlegged somewhere on YouTube or wherever we found it, and that was the first time. So 2016.
So, what was your opinion about it? Was it like, oh well, I didn't miss anything?
Not at all. I mean, see, the thing is an important thing to take into consideration is the fact that these people that watched this show for the first time in 1990 or whatever it was, 89, 90, nothing had come before that was as crazy. So it had this huge impact for them. Me watching it in 2016 after seeing crazy things on TV now, and episodes of Breaking Bad or whatever they are, where things are so pushed now that it wasn't that shocking to me. It didn't come across as like, what? But when you start to think of it in context of, okay, I've never seen this before, 15 years old, and it's 1989, 1990, and I'm watching the show. Yeah, it would have been a trip to watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, that's sort of like, I guess I was dampened down a little bit by the fact that I had seen, I had watched it so much later in life, as opposed to virgin eyeballs on this thing, if that makes any sense, So, yeah.
Scott, Ron?
Go ahead, Scott. I'll let you take.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, I'll go, because it's the total opposite. Like I remember the commercial saying Nicktoons are debuting, and just seeing that 3 different Nicktoons were going to debut on the same day. And it's crazy that they were Ren and Stimpy, Doug, and Rugrats. 3 massive home runs. Their first ones. That shows you the brilliance of Vanessa Coffey, I mean, that she saw. I mean, those shows are still big hits, So I was seeing what is this? What is this? What is a Nicktoon? Because it's funny, there are a couple of parts that are similar in the documentaries, and I thought that was so cool. Like, we both kind of show how lame cartoons were, like they were commercials. That was it.
They were.
Yes.
And I did like them, for sure. But like going back and watching them, there's no value, And I try to go back and watch some of those old, other cartoons. But yeah, what is it? And I just remember seeing Ren and Stimpy, like that was, part of the little trailer, and going, what is that? Like, what on earth? I can remember then when it came out, just be like, what? Like Powdered Toast Man with the Pope grabbing onto his buttocks. And I can remember watching, Space Madness. That was the one that I really remember. Was that season 1 or is that season 2?
Yeah, it was season 1.
I remember that one just being like, this is awesome. Like, what is this? Just biting the
ice cream bar. the soap.
Because I was a weird little kid, but I was that exact age that they were going for. Doug was about an 11-year-old boy. I was an 11-year-old boy when this stuff came out. But my and then just so yeah, that was my first. I mean, I was all in with Ren and Stimpy the moment I saw it, and then as I grew up, you know, it was on MTV as well. It was on MTV and Nickelodeon, and so I was kind of getting into Beavis and Butthead and Liquid Television and stuff like that you guys show in there. And so I was like, this is awesome. It's like on both of my favorite channels. And then for Nickelodeon, the first thing I ever saw, Nickelodeon in general, was You Can't Do That on Television. I remember seeing that, and very similar. Like, what is this? You know, kids are chained up in dungeons. They're getting like green slime poured on their heads. This is nuts.
It's the best.
So yeah, Ron.
Oh, yeah. Having a chance to revisit it and having a chance to see how much effort went into it, not just Ren and Stimpy, but Nickelodeon as a whole, and also being older and being able to reflect and go, wow, somebody like a Vanessa Coffey, this was like the ultimate go by your gut decision. It was the ultimate. Because if you were to take any of those shows, or the vast majority of those shows, into a studio head today, they would fire you on the spot. There is no way most of those shows would ever get made. Yeah. So to look back and go, wow, as you said earlier, we're talking about this stuff, 30 years later, and it's still just as entertaining, is just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary.
And Chemo's gonna have an easy time answering this. What is your favorite Nick show or Ren and Stimpy episode?
It's been so long since we finished the doc, because I used to know there. I had a couple of favorite episodes, but I would say, okay, you're gonna have to help me with this because it's been so long now. The one where they use the Disney animators. Fart, the fart one.
Oh, Stimpy's first
fart.
Son of Stimpy.
Yeah.
Son of
Yeah,
Stimpy.
Son of Stimpy.
Son
Yeah.
of Stimpy, yeah.
I think it's just such a great episode. So I would have to say that's one of my favorites, just because the artwork is just absolutely amazing in it, and the music that they used, and just how it's just how they juxtapose that sadness with something that is so absolutely silly and adolescent, but at the same time you kind of like, damn, I really hope he finds it, like with you, so yeah.
I have to say too, Alex and I reviewed that episode last Christmas, and I didn't realize that up until Alex pointed it out. There's hardly any jokes in that one. It's all played straight, but it's the silliest thing that's happening on the episode. And I'm like, wow, that's a great episode. Totally even and put together well. If you're making us feel sorry for a fart, yeah, that's something.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty amazing.
Stupid.
Yeah, I would say Toothache for me. I mean, it's hard to choose, but still just watching that and wanting to sort of climb out of your skin when you see, and again, to think that was made for kids. I mean, come on, like, who greenlit that? It's insane.
Scott, how about you?
I would say, I really like Sven Hoek, but then I also, like I said, Space Madness, just because seeing that was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. That scene in Toothache, that is another one, an iconic one that I remember, pulling out the nerve ending.
It's painful looking.
And
that's all sound effects right there.
What's the scene? What's the one where they cut Stimpy's butt off and make pecs for Ren in it, and so he gets all conceited and leaves him behind. So Stimpy's like buttless and like crying because now Ren's hot because he has Stimpy's butt cheeks as pecs.
Oh, they even wrote a song about it too, called Ren's Pecs.
Yes.
Stimpy's just laying there on the beach with his sun hat on the beach and just looking at him. Oh, I miss you when you were just Ren. Yeah.
Man,
so
good.
It is
amazing.
All right. Well, I think that is everything that we have for these three fine gentlemen. Slimesters don't go away because we've got quite a bit more for you after they go. But thank you, all of you guys, for taking the time to come out and be a part of this and sharing with us your experience making these two documentaries. They're both wonderfully done. I love I love both of them so much. And thank you, Gakoids, for suggesting that we could get to talk with these guys. So thank you.
It's totally an honor.
Oh my God, please. We're so stoked you guys reached out. It's great meeting you. And it was really interesting to hear Scott's journey, because, you know, it can be very lonely making a doc.
Yes!
And to hear somebody else go through the same thing, you're like, oh yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
So
100%.
great to meet you. Yeah,
Yeah, I really
likewise,
appreciate you guys
likewise.
reaching out.
that was awesome.
Brought back some fond memories.
Great.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Good luck with your future projects too.
Thank you so much,
that's
fellas.
tremendous.
All right. Well, now that they have jumped ship, or we hit the eject button and sent them all on their way. No,
Or the shiny red button.
the big candy-like button.
button.
We are going to go to one of two segments for the episode today, and we are going to start with, for the first time this season, Rename Game. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. The Orange Years and Happy Happy Joy Joy are like two perfect. They are perfect names for both of these documentaries. There's nothing that I could ever come up with that's going to top one of those. But that's not the task. The task is we have to rename it and see if we can find something that could be fun. So for the Orange Years, because we're thinking nostalgic and we're looking back on something. And whenever I think of that, I think of when Nickelodeon did their time capsule a long time ago, and everyone's still waiting to unearth the time capsule. So for the Orange Years, I thought of Nickelodeon Time Capsule, The Origins of Nickelodeon. Manny, what did you think of?
I thought of Nickelodeon, How the Slime Began to Run.
Ooh, I like it. Oh, good. Should have done something with the slime geyser. Oh well. Maybe blowing their top would be something more akin to Ren and Stimpy. But for Happy Happy Joy Joy, what I thought of was Ren and Stimpy, made with heart or made with fart. And actually, because Manny and I, we use the same doc for this, and I put my title in early this afternoon, and then Manny had messaged me back and said, "Dude, I used fart in my title too." I'm like, of course you did. Great minds think alike.
It's great. Can we share a podcast without going crazy?
No.
All right.
We're doing a podcast. Of course we're crazy. What was your title?
My title was Ren and Stimpy, the art behind the farts.
All right, so to recap our titles, I have Nickelodeon Time Capsule, The Origins of Nickelodeon, and Manny has Nickelodeon, How the Slime Began to Run. And for Happy Happy Joy Joy, I have Ren and Stimpy, Made with Heart or Made with Fart, and Manny has Ren and Stimpy, The Art Behind the Farts. We will be putting those up on Instagram for a little vote. So cast your vote on which of these titles for each documentary that you like the best. Manny, you know what I just realized?
What's that?
This is an episode review. And we just went straight into our segments and completely left out our review. So we got to hold up on the second segment.
People need to know what we think.
We got to give our opinion on how terrible both of these documentaries were.
I know, man.
I mean, we that's why we had to kick him out so we could bash and completely talk trash.
Completely derail what they have to say.
Awful. Just pure awful.
Just horrible.
F. Both of them. No, for the Orange Years, because I'll start with that one. I don't know how you feel about the Orange Years in terms of I have a very unique perspective on the Orange Years because I started I've seen it twice. Um, one pre-podcast and one during podcast. And that completely has changed my perspective of the documentary. Not in filmmaking, not in scope or anything like that, but because whenever I first started this was back when I was doing the Instagram lives and I was just starting to get FaceTime with a lot of these people. And then I started watching the documentary. It had come out. Well, it was announced that it was going to be coming out, and it wasn't on streaming service yet. And the only way you could watch it is if you buy the at first DVD and then the Blu-ray. And I was like, oh no, I'm getting Blu-ray. And I pre-ordered the Blu-ray. I've got it out with the rest of my movies. I was like, no, I'm getting this. I don't care what my wife says. I'm buying this one. And then she's like, why? I'm like, I don't care. And at the time I was reading Slimed, so I was really getting back into learning, not because there for a while I was just getting into the shows and the network, but now I'm getting into the how and why, and I wanted to know all this stuff. And this came out at a perfect time for me, and I've started seeing all these people, and of course I recognized all the actors. I recognized Mark Summers and Alyssa Reyes and Keenan and Kel and all these great people, but then the people behind the scenes, I didn't know them. I had no idea who Alan Goodman was, who Scott Webb was, and then like a few weeks later, I ended up inadvertently scheduling an appointment or scheduling an Instagram live with Alan Goodman, and then I looked up his history and all the things that he had done, and watching the documentary at first, I was beaming ear to ear, completely reliving everything about the network and remembering how cool it was to be a kid and watch everything that was on the network. It was so cool then. It's still cool whenever you did to go back and watch it now, because a lot of times we go back and watch things as we were as a kid and with adult eyes now, like, yeah, it's not as cool as I
It's not as
remember.
good. Yeah.
Nickelodeon's not really that way. It's still really awesome. And watching the documentary just really brought me back to that. And now watching it again now, it's it's completely shifted how I feel about it, because now I've talked with most of these people. I'm scheduled to talk to some of these people, and I'm getting to know them. And now I don't have that, oh my gosh, this brings back so many memories, because I've already watched it and now I've learned so many more things about Nickelodeon since I've watched it. I'm not saying that it's dampened. I'm not saying it's dampened at all. But what we had said earlier, we've gotten to talk 2 hours one on one with some of these people, and then you have to cut down to about 10 to 15 seconds of their interview in a documentary, and that's, I don't know how Scott did it, because there's no way I could have done that. But watching it again, I was sitting watching it with Megan, and she was going, "You got to talk to him, didn't you?" Yeah, I did. Did he share that with you? That story, no. And hearing all these, but he did tell me these things and all these other fun things. But now it's less, oh, this is cool. It's more like, I got to do that. I got to talk to that guy. That's cool.
Having the
And
personal experience definitely
yeah,
changes that. Yeah.
and it doesn't change my rating at all. It's just my opinion, my experience, not my opinion, my experience with it has changed, which is a very rare thing for me, because most audiences aren't going to have that. They're not going to have my experience because they're not doing this show. They've not got to talk with these people, and that's just cool. And I do give this a very, very high rating because I absolutely love it. I love how deep into the history that Scott has gone, the people that he's gotten. Um, I give it a double S, which is one tier, one small tier away from being triple S, and the only reason I don't is because there are some shows that we didn't really get to address. And I speculated ahead of time whenever I first saw it, because I was like, dude, yes, we missed Roundhouse. We talked about that. We also didn't really talk about Space Cases, but at the same time, Space Cases was more under Herb Skinnell's um,
Rain.
reign, and less Geraldine Laybourne, which is what we were talking about. Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, Wienerville,
Hey
uh,
Arnold.
Hey Arnold. Well, I don't know. Hey Arnold was right there on right when things were starting to transition as well. But we also didn't even look at like some of the more obscure things like Skate TV. I would have loved to have heard more about that, and some more of the other 80s shows like Out of Control, and the really obscure stuff like Turkey TV. I would have loved to have heard more about these other programs, but that's me being super jealous, not jealous, but selfish is the word, because I can't get enough of it. It's like, yes, these are all the big ones, but I also want all the small detailed stuff too. And that is a completely unrealistic expectation. I know it is. And not everybody's going to want to get on here, get a documentary that talks so intricate with all these little things. An hour and a half cut is a nice brisk pace.
Like a Get the Picture documentary,
Yeah.
or a Funhouse documentary.
Yeah.
It could go on forever.
It could.
And like you said earlier in the podcast, you could easily make a series of this, like
You could.
seasons of the beginnings of Nickelodeon.
And I know that he was running, and he had said he was running short on time, and he had to get these things going. And some people he just didn't get in contact with. I completely understand that, because
Really,
if
you
you've
know
been
about that, Alex?
yes, because I mean, you guys know, for all of you listening, there's been episodes when I've said, dude, I've tried. Gullah Gullah Island, which is a huge episode right now. It keeps getting I keep getting notifications from YouTube saying your most watched episode this week was Gullah Gullah Island. It's been like that almost since it came out. It's like, wow, that one. And I have nobody from the show in that one, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody, which just amazes me. But for the Orange Years, I do give it a double S, which is beyond my expectations. It was masterfully handled. Just me being selfish, I would have liked it to be a little bit longer, and I would have liked to have seen more of the other people that obviously didn't get a hold of. But that's, I don't care. It's still wonderfully done. What do you rate the Orange Years?
I don't want to seem like I'm copying you.
But go ahead.
But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and give a short synopsis of what I say. When I first saw this, it was during 2020 or 2021, and I bought this movie on the iTunes store because I wasn't aware of a Blu-ray or a DVD as of that time. And I watched it, much like you did, about twice or three times during that time. And it was really great to see the interviews of people, especially like Jim Jenkins. That was like one of the first times I ever seen Jim Jenkins do an interview. Geraldine Laybourne too. And yeah, she has a different career now, and she did go away from Nickelodeon. But what was really nice about it was that she spoke so passionately about it. She even went into like the story of like the whole Universal thing, where it's like they have, Disney has a mouse, will be your mouse. And that was just, I still got chills just watching that, just seeing how passionate she was. And especially like I brought up earlier, the whole, what does a kid want? And you don't have that on TV now. And Alex, you explained well that not what adults think kids want, it's what kids want. And that's what it felt like. It felt like a network run by kids for kids. And that's what connects everybody to this network. It's what attracted me and what attracted you to this network. Because yeah, true, in my older years, I skipped away from Nickelodeon. But then I yearned back, and I just like, wow, I didn't realize that I could have like enjoyed and savored the 90s Nickelodeon when I was around it. And now it's like, it's amazing that people are still talking about it to this day. And watching the Orange Years really, it really gave you that feeling. of just like, not longingness, but it's like, it fills you with as like a sense of like hope, and maybe this will come back in a future way, possibly. So I would give this a double S. I really, really enjoyed it, and you gave a perfect reason of why it doesn't get a triple S. I just wish it was longer, and they would have covered more shows, but we learned earlier why most shows could not get covered. But yeah, hey, what documentaries have I made? Exactly. So tremendous,
Wienerville.
tremendous job. Yeah. Soon to come, folks.
Well, so
Yeah.
that way we're not copying from each other, because I'm sure our opinion is going to be very similar. Why don't you lead the way with Happy Happy Joy Joy? What is your rating of that?
I saw this in a really interesting time too. This was a time when the world was dark. It was cloudy. I think it was a Wednesday. But I remember watching this in a cloudy, rainy day, and I loved every bit of it. I give this a triple S. It completely goes into every detail of the Ren and Stimpy show. The rise, the fall, even John Kay. Seeing John Kay was a tremendous highlight for me, because that point I had no idea about the man, except for a previous documentary that I did see where it was called Sick Little Monkeys. And it was a pro John Kay documentary about his involvement with the show and everything. This documentary, Happy Happy Joy Joy, opened up a lot of light to the inner workings of it. Not all the bad parts, but definitely artists. A community of artists coming together to make something new, and especially at a time when cartoons were terrible. I don't really have an opinion on that because I was 3 or 4 at the time. But I could always look back at these older cartoons with adult eyes and just be like, there's no substance here. But Ren and Stimpy ignited something that we still see in cartoons today.
Mhm.
And I think that is a treasure that needs to be watched. If you haven't watched it yet, folks, give it a watch.
Nice. And same way, I echo that sentiment. The thing that sets it apart for me, one, as a filmmaking standpoint, of they had to do this twice. They were done, and then this huge thing blew up, and they had to completely rethink their strategy. And I had mentioned it earlier, the balance that they had to make to be not trying to force the audience to draw their own conclusions, because a lot of documentaries do that, where they will start with one thing that a person had said, stop, and then not hear the rest of that person's story, but cut to somebody else trying to emphasize what the other person just said in their two separate things. Um, I'm yeah, I will throw shade. The Because I'm that guy. But Quiet on Set did that. On the first 2 episodes, they would do things like that. Not to discredit what the content was, but there were times when they would, instead of have one person finish out their story, they would cut to somebody else trying to emphasize something else. And it's not just that. And ID, apparently, as a network, has a really bad reputation for doing that sort of thing, and the really schlocky journalism. But that's not the case with Happy Happy Joy Joy. It was very much, let's pay honor to the contributions that John Kay did. Let's pay honor to the work that Nickelodeon contributed to it as a studio. Let's pay honor to the animators and the works that they did. Now, here's the ugly side, and here's what really happened. Take it for what it is. This is what happened. This is how it affected Nickelodeon. This is how it affected the animators. And now the show's done. And now we have to address this thing that John Kay has done, how he's moved on, what he's doing with the characters, and what he's done in his personal life, because his personal life does affect the way people look at Ren and Stimpy now. And then hearing everybody's perspective on that But at the end of the day, you still have an amazing animated show that is put together by an exceptionally talented group of people. That is a tough thing to balance and keep it fair without playing favoritism in any direction. And that is masterful journalism, documenting. It's fantastic. So I agree. Triple S.
I mean, you got to think things like that happen for a reason, because think if that thing didn't happen, that whole story on BuzzFeed, they wouldn't have got John Kay for that documentary. And I'm amazed that they got him to open up about his situation.
I'm not entirely surprised. Because I think, much like how Dan Schneider had to come out to say his part of what happened, John Kay probably was in the same boat, where people were probably encouraging him, or he was probably thinking, I got to get my voice out now because all this stuff's coming about me, and I've got to try to make myself, I got to look good. So I'm sure. I mean, yes, if it hadn't broke, then everyone had the chance to talk to John Kay, and I'm sure that he would have shared some. But the fact that they were able to earn his trust and get the dirt, which you have to have whenever you're talking about this subject, because it would have looked super shady if everyone else is talking about it, but he wasn't. But it's really well done. Really well done. All right, to wrap up the episode, it's been a while. We've got a couple of letters from Mona. She's got some emails that were sent to us, so we are going to check out Mona's mailbag.
These are for you.
All right, so for Mona's mailbag, got 2 emails. Big surprise, one from John and one from Travis. Are 2 of our faithful viewers, both Gakoids. You guys are awesome.
Yes.
I will read the first one, and then Manny, I'll have you read Travis's.
All right.
But for this first one, this is in regards to the Nickelodeon Bullies episode that I did with Jordy. So this is from John, and the subject says, "My thoughts on Nickelodeon Bullies." And this is what John had to say. "Hi, Alex and company. It's your friend, in quotes, Big John. I didn't coin that nickname. My friend Tyler and Chris gave it to me. I'm 6 feet, 3.5 inches tall, so take a wild shot in the dark how I got that name. I enjoyed your latest podcast. Welcome Freshman is truly a hidden gem. I found it on YouTube and archive.org. I personally enjoy both the sketch comedy format and the traditional sitcom format. I can't choose between the two as both formats are good in their own way. I wanted to share my thoughts on the top Nickelodeon bullies. Feel free to share this in your bonus mailbag if you want." Why, thank you, John. I think I will. Top Nickelodeon bullies. Number 1, Endless Mike from Pete and Pete. He's so mean for the sake of being mean. He has almost no morally redeeming factors. There is nothing in his life that explains his behavior. Unlike Angelica is ignored by her parents and Helga has a dysfunctional family. Speaking of, number 2, Angelica. She is so mean to babies. Number 3, Helga Pataki. I like Helga and that weird I love Arnold, I bully Arnold thing that she's always having to deal with. Number 4, Roger from Doug. And number 5, Ed Bighead from Rocko's Modern Life. Honorable mention, the only reason I didn't put her on the list was because her brief screen time. Jessica Alba from The Secret World of Alex Mack. All 3 of her episodes are so good, and she was such a fun foil to Alex. Looking forward to the next episode. I hope you enjoyed it by now. Thank you for taking the time to read this email. Splat you later, John. Thank you, John. Solid picks. I had actually thought about Egg Bighead when I was making the list, and then I didn't even put him in my not even in my honorable mentions, but good choices. And Manny, would you read our Splat Chats email from Travis?
I sure will. Hi, Alex and friends. I just finished watching the Splat Chats episode where you talked about your favorite kids' educational shows. It was fun. What are some of my favorite educational shows when I was a kid? Well, I was a huge fan of Sesame Street, Reading Rainbow, and especially Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. His calm and gentle demeanor were of great comfort to me as a young child. I still try to follow his teachings to this very day. I wrote to Mr. Rogers a few times when I was little, and he wrote back every single time. In fact, I still have some of his response letters. Also, Mr. Rogers helped me introduce me to jazz. In 2017, I got a chance to do a phone interview with jazz guitarist Joe Gregory. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Yeah, I'd be there with you.
One of the cast members from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, for my jazz radio show. It was absolutely a blast. Plus, as you may know, last May on my jazz show, I premiered an original radio special about Mr. Rogers and history with jazz. I think it went over really well too. In addition, I also think you should check out both the Won't You Be My Neighbor documentary, which features clips from Ren and Stimpy, and you can do that on television, by the way, as well as A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood starring Tom Hanks. They're really great movies. Thanks for your time. Keep up the good work. Stay gacky. Let's take the gack back. Travis K. Thanks, Travis. Appreciate that. Those are actually really great movies and documentaries. If you haven't seen them, they're really good. And Tom Hanks, believe it or not, was not wanting to play Mr. Rogers, but he did a really good job.
Doesn't surprise me. It's freaking Tom Hanks. Dude's fantastic. And thank you. That's awesome, though, that you wrote to him as a kid and got letters back, and you still have them. That's so cool.
Yeah, you need to show those sometime. I really would like to see those.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for writing it in on our Splat chats. I gotta say, from our Gackoids this season, we've been trying a new format over on Patreon. Instead of doing exclusive episodes, we've been doing exclusive minisodes that are very much just us chatting, talking about different subjects, and that one was a fun episode. I mean, we always have fun, but that one, the educational programs, that was a fun one to do.
It was. It really was.
All right. Well, let's wrap the episode up with our closing question. Our closing question for the episode is, what part of Nickelodeon history would you want to make a documentary about? You can write to us via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram, Facebook, any one of those platforms. Just look for @SplatAttack Podcast. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you doing? Subscribe. If you're watching, hit that button. You know where it is. You see it. I know you do. Interact with us on social media, wherever you can find us. We're pretty versatile, and I know that you guys aren't seeing on screen right now, but Manny is absolutely going to be your interpreter in some form. I may have to have a little picture-in-picture thing at the bottom of the screen. But it was a really good episode. I enjoyed getting to have these guys here and share their experiences about making these documentaries. It was just cool. A very, very different pace for the type of shows that we usually do on Splat Attack. So it was cool to have them.
Yeah, not to mention it shows what a small world it is, because they all seem like they all knew each other.
Yeah, and the amount of times that they were going, "Oh yeah, I had that too," and
I was there. It's amazing, totally unplanned too. Great.
Yeah. Oh gosh, the amount of times that's happened where it was just, you know what, we have two similar things. Let's see if they would want to get together. I mean, this last episode, or not the last one, but the one before with Splat, Clarissa and Alex Mack, we're just picking two characters that were similar. And then I went to get in touch with Tom and told him I'd like to have Mitchell on the show. And Tom was like, "Oh, hey, I love Tom. I love Mitchell." And then called him up and got him on the episode, even though I was already messaging him. It's like, wow, I had no clue. So it's so cool how fortuitous these kinds of things work out.
It's amazing.
But until our next episode, Manny, will you help me build the studio, please? I've got to rebuild the wall that Ren broke down because of how angry he got.
Aye, aye, co-captain. Just remember, he can be very temperamental. Afterwards, let's check out some classic Nickelodeon. Oh, look what he did. He got into the orange paint and made footprints all over the floor.
It is not I who am crazy. It is I who am
Oh no.
mad. Didn't you hear?
He's foaming at the mouth. I think he's got the space madness.
Splash you later, Slimesters. I gotta rebuild the wall and save my co-host. Oh, I have to do everything around here. See you guys later.
Who's responsible for this? Nick's gonna tell who makes Ren and Stimpy. Meet Bob.
I'm the creative director.
And Jim.
I'm the producer.
A producer is the guy that tells the artist what to do, and then, when the cartoon's done, he takes all the credit.
When I was a kid, I was really silly. Bob is about 80% Stimpy and about 20% Ren. We're all crazy. That's the big secret.
Now you know who's responsible for Ren and Stimpy.
Don't tell anybody, okay?
On the only network for you.